Yo, what's up everybody? Today's video was brought to you by the half pound of stir-fried beef I just ate because I guarantee you I would not be awake right now if I didn't eat that. Now, today I want to talk a bit about Mastemon, and if you saw my regional report type video, you already did see the list. Basically, there were two differences being the Tokomon and Solomon were instead the BT21 Koromon and the EX4 Agumon. The reason for this is because I wanted to try out running a different low end that gave me basically the same value, because the Agumon gives you a memory if you control a yellow or red tamer, but allowed me to potentially draw more cards or anything else. I have tried out a bunch of different low ends, but that one, it was really nice, but it has caveats. For example, let's say we have this Murray on board, and I'll slide these back a little. The issue you may sometimes encounter with the other lineup is if you digivolve into whatever level 5, let's just go with the BT11 Angelomon, right? You can be unable to find a piece, right? You look in your security, there's no Lady Debbie there. You've already drawn for Digivolution, that wasn't a Lady Debbie. And at least with Tokomon, you'd immediately be able to draw another card. If you have the Koromon instead, you'd have to tap this first. You'd fail to fully resolve the effect because you don't have anything to play. But that would trigger the inheritable on both the Koromon and the Agumon to draw you cards. So that could potentially find you pieces and allow you to end your turn relatively safely, right? Because if you get this, you play it down for 4, you gain 1 because of this. And assuming you have the appropriate Gatomon in your inheritables, they can DNA Digivolve. You also potentially could slot the Solomon out for the starter deck Solomon because it has that same inheritable. And having the redundancy can be nice because sometimes you will absolutely be going into the EX6 Gatomon instead, and being able to do the end of turn DNA Digivolution without having access to that level 4 or this Tamer is really, really nice. So yeah, there's that. But aside from that, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. They feel relatively equivalent, but the trade-off may mean that you prefer one over the other. I just wanted to mention options. The main thing I probably need to explain, though, is the Tapermon. And the Tapermon is a kind of like consistency stability thing. So, of course, I am running 4 copies of BT22 Murray. And this card pitches specific traits to draw 2. And that would be Holy Beast, Angel, Archangel, Fallen Angel, or the CS trait. So while she can pitch herself if you're ever in a situation where you need to do that, you cannot pitch your level 3s specifically, usually, regardless of how you build your deck. I've seen some people only build with the 4 Patamon, some people use this Solomon or other Solomon, and I've also seen a litany of other level 3s, but I haven't really seen people go for this all that much. Even though this is really easy to trigger, if something is removed from your security, you draw a card, and a lot of your cards do that more so than healing you, so, you know, pretty good. So even digivolving into it, if you have to, is not bad. It may even be a reason that you run 4 of this instead of 4 of the Solomon. Up to you. But, yeah, that's part of the consideration here. The next thing is Digilab. So these are the only 2 options I'm running, but you potentially could cut some other cards to run more options. I really like these, even though it's somewhat restrictive as to when you can use them. If you control the CS Murray, you can play these down. That can be good or a problem, because maybe you're in a situation where you really want to tag this out, but doing that means you can't play these. So that's something to be mindful of. You might also just find yourself in a situation where you don't want to discard any of your Digimon in hand, and because this is a CS trait card, you can pitch it. Now, I do also want to show some stuff that you can do with this, because this makes doing OTK stuff much easier than it might otherwise be. So I guess as an example, if I move some stuff out of the way, let's say we have this, and we evoed into the Gatomon in the raising area, right? So, from this position, if we were to move out, we could let's say Digivolve into the CS Angelomon, because that's the only card we have in our hand that is level 5. It adds something from the top of our security to our hand, and unfortunately, it is another, oh, wrong card, another Angelomon, but this time it's BT11. Well, normally you wouldn't be able to do anything here, but because we have this, we can use this to tuck this under, and we'll gain 2 memory, so we go back from 0 to 2. And then we'd be able to Digivolve this here and potentially find either of our Lady Devi in security. There's no guarantee, but it's something you can go for. And even if you're stuck on this, you could play this down and gain 1. This would effectively cost 3 as a consequence. End of turn DNA. And through that, you would have drawn 2 cards, right? Thanks to the Tapermon and the Tokomon. So that would have been extra opportunities to potentially see the card. If you actually did tag this out, though, into this, from this position, you could maybe OTK if we dial back a little bit. So let's say we are back at this point, and let's see. I think you might need 2 memory for this, because I haven't done the combo in a hot minute with a minimum amount of memory. So assuming we have 2, move out, bot deck this. We play out our BT11 Mirai. The Gatomon will Digivolve into, let's say, the BT11 Angelomon, and we'll draw 2 off this card's effect when it grabs the Lady Devi out of security, right? So then we tap this, lay this out for free. This goes up to 1, or rather our memory goes up from 1 to 2. Don't know why I said that like that. And then we would get to DNA Digivolve into this Mastemon, right? We draw for Digivolution, we'd get to play something out, maybe this, right? Currently at 2 memory, we trash some security. Because of that, we draw 1 again. And from here, you don't have Alliance, but you could swing out, right? That would be 1 check, put the opponent down to 2, whatever. But you'd also be able to crack this, tuck this under, and gain 2. So now you should be at 4 memory, and you could DNA here if you really wanted to, or you could play this down for 4, gain 1, so you're back at 1. So I guess you could actually do this from 1 memory. You can DNA both of these into this one. Again, drawing for Digivolution. You could toss this into your security to trash your opponent's top, right? And you get to play out a body, you swing with this, the other body DNAs with this, and you go from there. There's a couple of different ways you can sequence this overall, so it is dependent on what you have in hand. I just kind of grabbed one of everything, so that's why I sequenced it like that. But yeah, this card is super duper useful. It allows you to win in situations you otherwise would have had to like wait a couple turns, maybe interact with the opponent a little bit more. So I think it's very useful. It's something that you should be considering. And given that I only have like 2 option slots, I think you can see why I actually pivoted off of, what was it, Ice Archery, even though I think that card is super duper good in the current format. Yeah, overall, Tamer wise, I am on 4 BT22 and 3 of BT11 and EX6, though where did I put the last one? There we are. One thing I would say is if you are very focused on doing like OTK setups and whatnot, you might want to cut this down by 1 and run a 4th copy of this. I usually see people arguing against it because this is the card that a lot of the time feels much more flexible, and it's the one that you get more mileage out of in like random situations. But if you are specifically just trying to win the game, 4 of this is the way to go for sure. Next up, we have the level 4s, which would be 4 and 4 of this, which means there's 1 right here and yet another right here. So I previously talked about how much I don't really care for the EX6 Gatomon. I still have a bit of frustration with it because I really don't like the inheritable. Like, this is not a deck that currently has access to DP minus, so while you can use it to get rid of floodgates and stuff like that, especially if it's stacked up with the Solomon, it's very frequently an inheritable that I don't really need or I don't really get a whole lot of mileage out of. Occasionally I can swing over an opponent's body because it lets me put them down a little bit if they're really, really big, but it's really rare because the main thing I can think of where this comes up is like Gallant, and Gallant will be unaffected by this anyway, so it's like, okay, what are you doing? You know? But yeah, I'm much more happy with this card given running 10 Murray means I'm gonna be hitting more frequently off of it. It's still a little frustrating that it doesn't like add an angel and then add like an angel or archangel and then add a fallen angel or Murray. Maybe that would be asking for a bit much, but it would feel much less bad in situations where you really need this thing to hit 2 pieces. So, you know. But realistically, I can't complain too much, so I'm not gonna. As for the 5s, I'm on 3 of everything you've seen so far, but I need to now pull them out of the Digivolution pile. I see a lot of people actually go for a total of 6 Alliance inheritables between the BT23 and the EX6. The EX6 also is kind of nice in rough game states because you can give something security attack minus, which can mean that you will be able to live even on 0 security. Also, when you're at no security and you play this card down, it will still heal you a card, so that's nice. You can kind of build yourself back up, so that's really, really cool. I really like the BT11 cards, both because of their inheritables and because of the memory gain stuff that they do. It can make playing down your Murray much more efficient in situations where you're stuck on level 5s, or maybe you want to put your opponent to like 1 or 2 or something while passing turn and using your inheritable for the DNA Digivolution. This thing popping 4s is really good. Inherit has blockers, so even if you don't have access to this or the Mastemon body dies, partitions, whatever, you can still do a lot with that. Both of them reducing their cost by 3 is absolutely amazing. Honestly, if the EX6 cards reduced their cost by 2, they would have been so good. But I also still am kind of frustrated with the way those cards are worded. They don't have like a fail condition, because like if you don't, I think they should be worded in a way where like if you don't play a tamer off of it, then they do the thing. So even in this situation where you don't have a Murray, they could give something security attack minus or delete something. But hey, we got a quality of life improvement, so once again, I cannot really complain much. Now my top end looks a little goofy because I'm on 4 BT23 and then 2 promo, 2 ace. This is just something I tend to run for locals because it gives me the widest range of coverage. If I was going to an event, I would very likely be doing 3-3-2. I know a lot of people want to cut the ace, but I don't feel comfortable leaning fully into the OTK setup because you're not always going to be able to do it. Even sometimes when you're able to go for it, you can trigger effects that proc on being trashed and stuff like that, so you need to be mindful of that. There's a lot of little things, and this card is just really, really impactful when it comes up. There's a lot of games that I otherwise would have lost if I wasn't running this, and this was also because I was doing a lot of playtesting where I did cut this out entirely for the last 2 copies of the promo, and I frequently just found myself wanting to have access to at least 1 copy of it. So it's also possible that you could go like, you know, 3-1 and probably be good. You would see it less though, so that is something to consider. Maybe you want to adjust your ratios. But yeah, I like the lineup. Also, always remember with this Mastemon that you can put your own Digimon into security, so that could force your opponent to have to like pop it or something if they have like mandatory deletion effects, like if you're playing against what's that card called, EX6, Shoutmon EX6. The thing with that is you need to be mindful because it does do a lingering DP minus for the turn, so if you spit out your bodies, they will die unless, you know, we get some way to boost our DP generally. You could also run, I guess, Genai's House for that, but I think that's the one that's all turns. If it's not, I mean the Island of Adventure. It's one of the two. But yeah, this effect is super duper good. Remember, if your opponent attempts to delete this and you do have another body out and you pop that body to Scapegoat, you can also still partition after the fact to spit the other pieces out and ace your opponent with either one. It's very interesting because even Thursday when I played this in a red hybrid, my friend, he guessed on which body to pop. I think he popped this, and it was the correct choice because I only had a Lady Devi in hand, though I don't think he had a way to know that because I drew that card. So, you know, very flexible card, super duper strong, but somehow it feels more reasonable than the collective of whatever Imperial has going on. That crazy. What else? Oh yeah. So if you want to run Amber Boost, I think that's fine. Having extra memory in a deck like this is useful. I mean, hey, I'm running this gives you 2. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just not really super duper happy with options that either don't interact with the opponent or don't like do something like this. This is a stability card in a way because of the fact that you can go into your Gato, you can have the 5 that you're hoping is going to do something, it does nothing, and you get a redo as long as it's the CS5s. It gives you more flexibility with your turns, and sometimes if you maybe just need to make the CS Mastemon twice to deal with your opponent's board, you get the opportunity to do that. This card also is really crazy because you can swing at the opponent's security and like chip them, right? You get to chip them for 2. On the first check, you get to toss your card away, right? So again, you are putting yourself in a situation where if they have an option in security that would do something to this, as long as it's not stunning it, you can trigger the effect and your opponent just has to deal with that. And if it ever triggers on your turn, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. If this and this are played next to each other, you actually will gain 2 memory because they see each other being tossed out simultaneously, so you gain 2. Kind of like Imperial, I guess, but it's much more difficult to do it here, and you actually need to have both correct components at the same time. If you have the other 5s, you get different outcomes, of course. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy with this card. I'm really happy with this card. Before I wrap the video up, I'm gonna talk about purple base. So you want a rookie that has a draw 1, trash 1 effect, and of course it would have to be purple or yellow because the level 4 we're using here is the BT11 Angemon. But don't want to go into him immediately unless you have to, right? Let's say we have the BT22 Murray. One thing that's really nice about this setup is because we are intending to digivolve from the trash utilizing the EX6 Murray, that means pitching your level 5s becomes considerably less of a liability in conjunction with all the pieces we're using. So let's say we pitch the Lady Devi, right? We draw 2 cards and pass turn to our opponent. Our opponent very likely is going to choke us to 1. We can evo into the Angemon in our raising area. If they put us to 2, we could move out and then evo into it, right? Of course, you'd want to tag this out. But we'd be able to pass turn by going into a level 5. But let's say we're at 1. Our opponent does whatever. They put us at 1 again. We move out, bot deck the BT22 Murray, play out our EX6 Murray, and then we can swing with Angemon. So the important thing is at least 1 Devimon should be trashed off of these effects, and that's why you want to have 2 draw 1, trash 1, so you can dig through your deck and hopefully see those pieces. This one gets Rush and Retaliation as long as you control a yellow Digimon or Tamer, which of course Murray will meet the condition of, so you could just swing out with this if you really want to. This one has the on play trash the top 3 cards of your deck effect, which means if you do not have a level 5 at the time you play this card, you can potentially get one and then resolve this effect. So in any case, this is deleted whether by a security battle or because you swung into an opponent's body. Doesn't really matter. The on deletion effect triggers, and in this case we'll just go into the BT11 Devimon. This has Fallen Angel trait, so you could tap this and digivolve it immediately, right? Let's say your opponent has a little body that you want to swing over. You could swing this at that little body, get rid of it, and then you could play one of your BT23 level 5s because they do reduce their cost. This is a little less efficient, but this still meets the trigger condition for the Murray, allowing the Devimon to digivolve into the Lady Devi in the trash. You can pitch something and potentially add back the Angemon for later use, right? Or whatever else you need. Preferably, you just go into the Lady Devi first, because then you play this down, you will gain a memory, and this will effectively cost 3. This will be suspended, of course, but then end of turn, you can do the DNA Digivolution despite not having access to the Godamon. This is a build that I think I would maybe consider running 4 copies of this. I've usually only used 3, but it's definitely something to fiddle around with. It's something that I think is relatively competent, and it can chip the opponent. But I think that's probably also one of the reasons I don't really see people entertaining the idea as much, because currently it just feels like the main thing a lot of decks are aiming to do is either win the game in a single turn or trash your opponent's security progressively so they don't have to incidentally give the opponent value off of their security, right? And Medusa is kind of the apex of this in a sense, but it's what we're working with. But yeah, that's been my overview currently. I do think this deck is very much capable of performing at the regional level, but you do still have to deal with the fact that you are running some whack ratios inherently, you know?